Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there, and welcome to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick, and I want to thank you for joining us here on AM 870. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m. Please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. Now on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. Boating Hour with Captain Rick. And thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, the best probiotic on the market, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free. To find their site, just go to the front page of theboatinghour.com, and you can click on Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios, reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California. If you got an event at land or at sea, let us know. You can email Captain Rick, but Raycom Radio will be there to help you. And we're going to have the founder of Raycom Radios on this show in the upcoming weeks to talk all about the importance of communication, the difference between all the different kinds of communications, from ham radio to GMRS radios, family radio services, two-way walkie-talkies, but of course, commercial two-way radio as well, and marine radio, what is marine radio called, Jensen?
It's called marine radio. It's a special frequency in the VHF band that is dedicated by the FCC for marine use. It's also a standard set of frequencies worldwide, and so it's a great way of communicating not only here on the U.S. shores and inland, but around the world. If you've got a marine radio, you can reach out for help. It's a standard set of frequencies we use.
That's fantastic. Well, welcome back to the show. I barely let you get a word in edgewise last week, so thanks for coming back and being on the show today.
I'm happy to be here. Actually, no worries. Talking to Colonel Lasser was awesome, and listening to him talk about the parade and the involvement that he's had for 32 years in the Torrance Armed Forces Parade was really exciting to listen to. So not a problem at all.
And he's a lieutenant colonel. What are the ranks in the Army? They're a lot different than. It's funny because some of they're similar, but they're different. So, lieutenant colonel, how high up is that? Is he almost is that like almost next to being a general?
That is 2 steps below. So, from lieutenant colonel, the next promotion would be colonel, and then from colonel would be brigadier general.
My understanding of the Army is from MASH.
There you go. I've got MASH, and then my dad served in Korea as well, so I get to hear a lot about it from him as we watch MASH together.
You know, my dad was a captain. He was trained as an engineer and then a medic, and then the Army put him through med school. He was on staff at Walter Reed, and then came out to Los Angeles. And my dad, as a captain, when they needed in Korea, served under Eisenhower in Korea. And my dad was on a couple battleships, so they needed the Navy needed the Army to have some doctors on board, and that was my dad. And I found out more about my dad after he passed. My dad was so humble, died a few years back, and someone from the Army knew that my dad had passed and came and did a presentation. I have the flag, I've got it framed. So the Army, wonderful, wonderful group of people. I'm going to find out a lot more about the Army next year, so when they're the featured branch. But, yeah, Lieutenant Colonel is really put in his dues, and I think I'm going to do a show I know this is a boating show, and I'm trying to relate everything to boating, but that's so impressive because he is their liaison to the Western Museum of Flight that was responsible for the flyovers, and I barely even talked about that. So, a lot of pilots are boaters.
That's true. That a lot of pilots are boaters, and as boaters, we depend a lot on pilots. If we have a problem, it's going to be probably an airplane or a helicopter that comes out doing search and rescue. I have a friend that suffered a heart attack while at Catalina and was evac'd by a Coast Guard helicopter and taken to a hospital on the mainland, and she's doing great now and still out there sailing, but all because of that healer that was out there. So talking about pilots and aircraft is an appropriate thing for the boating hour.
Well, let's talk about Al Verde and the crew and the rescue. So people are always interested in the rescues. early on in the show, I used to read scripts from rescues throughout the century. And I got a lot of good feedback from that because they're so interesting on the rescues. In the Coast Guard Auxiliary, we learn in some of the movies and in the training that not all, but a good majority of accidents and mishaps that happen, if you have the safety precautions and you're trained and educated, a lot of them could have been avoided. So let's talk about you, Jensen, how you got into boating, your history. I want to plug and promote Fairwind Yacht Club. I want to talk about Fairwind Yacht Club. And then, but let's start out with what you know about Al Verdi of Adesso 2 and the rescue.
One of the things you mentioned was the idea that if you've been trained and know what to do, you're not likely to get into trouble. So one of the things that happens is that we often forget that one of the most important pieces of safety equipment we have on a boat is our anchor. So
interesting.
The boat that was involved in this, had they just deployed their anchor, they would have been, safely off the rocks, would have been able to figure out what to do, contact help, and that. But they didn't do that. And so what ended up happening was they ended up getting blown onto the rocks. It was a pretty stiff wind and getting blown onto the rocks inside the breakwater at LA Harbor. Adesso 2 was called by the Coast Guard. They were the nearest vessel that could respond. They responded and followed their training, were able to throw a line to the vessel in distress, pull them off the rocks. Everyone was fine. And so it was, all in all, a good day for everyone. No one was hurt. They could have been very serious for the people with the wind and the waves against the rocks. So it's a point of remembering that how important it is to have the right safety equipment on our vessels and to practice things. The reason that rescue went so well on Adesso 2 was the practice that we put in every time we go out. So everything from knowing how to throw a heaving line, get that to the vessel in distress, being able to then talk to the people on the vessel, have them secure the tow line, being able to tow them off. All those things are things that are practiced all the time. That's all stuff that is really important, and we encourage people to do things like practice a man overboard drill. So if somebody is out on their own boat, practice a man overboard drill. Take a Type 4 floatable, throw it overboard, and practice going back and picking it up and talking through with everybody that's on your vessel what they would do in order to do that. That kind of rehearsal creates a great deal of safety on the vessel. And hopefully, we love being in the Coast Guard. It's great when we can participate in a rescue, but we would prefer to never have to be called. Our preference would be everybody's being safe. We're out there and we're bored because there's nothing to do and we're not having to rescue anyone. That would be our dream missions.
I took a training exercise in class, and it was all about life jackets. Of course, anytime you see Coast Guard Auxiliary and they're in public, they're always talking about wearing life jackets. So we jumped in the water, and I had a life jacket on, of course. I actually did it with two different life jackets. One that when you hit the water, it automatically blows up. So when you're sailing, a lot of sailors, they think they're close to shore, so they might not wear it. So they have this smaller versions that are light, but they blow up, and they're very functional life jackets. But what I never thought about is when you're thrown into the water. So we were in the swimming pool, actually at Cal Yacht Club, the yacht club they're rebuilding that burned down. So we were doing exercises, and we had deployed the raft. But when I jumped in with a life jacket, the life jacket wasn't on properly, and it went up, almost choked me. And I didn't know about the crotch straps that you should have.
One of the most important things with a personal flotation device, or PFD, or what people often call a life jacket, is having a proper fit. If it's not properly fit, as you say, we go in the water, it can shift upwards and either choke us or
come off.
Often with kids, if it's not properly fit, it'll just come completely off. So then you've got a floating life jacket and then a kid that's struggling in the water. So having something that properly fits is really important. As you mentioned, having a crotch strap is really a great thing because that will keep the PFD from riding up. And yes, it may be a little uncomfortable to have it on tightly, but if you go in the water, that's something you're going to want to have. You're going to want it to fit well, want to have it be tight.
Let's talk about you, Jensen. What's your background? How did you get into to boating? And then how did you evolve into the auxiliary? And then I want to make sure that you plug Fairwind Yacht Club because they just had their opening day at Burton Chase Park last month.
Sure. My dad bought a Columbia 26
I know the boat.
Back in the early 70s when we moved out to Los Angeles from Ohio. I got very excited about sailing. And so that summer, I built a 10-foot scow in my garage, or my dad's garage, and learned to sail that. The company that I got the plans from actually still exists. So Glen L Boating is still around. They still sell plans for building boats all these years later. But I spent several summers sailing that. Spent a lot of summers also when I wasn't on my boat, working on my dad's boat, whether it was revarnishing or working on the engine or the electronics. It was free labor, which is how my dad could afford to keep the boat. I stopped sailing for a long time. There was a big gap in my sailing career. And in the early 2000s, I had stumbled across a cooperative club called Fairwind Yacht Club. I went and met with the folks. They have a fleet of boats and talked to them. I got trained going through all of the various ASA courses. The American Sailing Association, which is now American Sailing, has courses, and I took the courses, eventually became an instructor. So I'm an ASA sailing instructor as well. And one of the things that came out of Fairwind was being able to sail a lot of different boats, meet a variety of people, just to have a lot of fun activities with people with similar interests. So Fairwind is a great place to learn to sail and to have access to boats at a reasonable cost.
So you've been a member for a while.
I've been a member for almost 20 years now. So it's been quite a while. I've really enjoyed it. Fairwind Yacht Club has an interesting history. It started off as the Hughes Aircraft Sailing Club, with the boats originally purchased by Hughes Aircraft, and it was for their employees. Over the years, it became then a more community-oriented club, and one of the things it's been always focused on is youth programs. So we have youth programs in both Marina del Rey and in Channel Islands Harbor. And it's one of the things that we pride ourselves in is working with the youth, training the youth in how to boat safely, as well as providing low-cost sailing for everyone.
Wow, I didn't know it had that history. I know that the yacht club, Marina Yacht Club, which I'm a member of, and that meets at the Marina City Towers, that was a yacht club founded by Howard Hughes, and a lot of the members were part of that. But I didn't know Fairwind's had that illustrious. That's a magnificent history, Fairwind Yacht Club. And they just had their opening day. I got some photos. I think I'll throw them up on the side of the group. A big group. I didn't know it was that big of a club. We refer to it as a paper club, but I didn't know it was that significant with that many members, so many boats in the in the harbor, and also up in Channel Islands. Have you sail up in Channel Islands at all? You ever get up there?
I've been up in Channel Islands several times. We have Fairwind has boats ranging from 20 feet up to 40 feet, everything from day sailors to cruisers to even a cruising catamaran. So wide variety of boats to learn on and to sail on.
And, on my dock where I have my boats, Fairwind has a couple of boats, and I've kind of crashed your party and grabbed a few donuts from time to time.
The donuts are there. We're always happy to have people come by and say hello. On our work days, you can check the club out at fairwind.org is the website. We'll have
Fairwind
information.
singular. A lot of people say Fairwinds. I correct them. It's Fairwind.
Fairwind, singular. So fairwind.org, all the information that you'd want about the club, where to, how to contact the club, and there are open houses held in both our port in Marina del Rey as well as Channel Islands monthly, and those dates are available on the website.
God, that's fantastic, because I go up to Channel Islands. I've got friends up there. I've been on other people's boats. It's actually a wonderful place. Ventura, Oxnard is a great area, and the auxiliary's very active up there. So it's a wonderful place. I'd like to move up. I'd like to move up there and retire and just go sailing and boating every day. But that's not in the cards for the near future.
Yeah, I've talked to several of your neighbors want you to move up there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the petition is full. The position is full. Well, I am going to do a whole show talking about the Coast Guard again. Captain Creasy was the featured speaker. We learned from Tom Lasser that she's a resident and her family's a resident there. She's the new captain that took over the base at Sector, Long Beach. And from Captain Manning retired, he had a career, I think it was 38 years long. He's now with the Port Authority, so he's got a full-time job there. So I was at that change of watch on base. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get her on. I'm sure she's aware. I've had a lot of coasties. Last month we tried to feature the Armed Forces Parade. We talked a little bit about last year about the Coast Guard being the featured branch. I had Lieutenant Junior Grade Ozwecki, so I had him on the show. I've had quite a few people, and I talked to Public Affairs. And we talked all about the Coast Guard and the things that they do. So I featured them, and I did feature Space Force. I had Colonel Walsh on the show. So she's the commander on base at Space Force Air Force Base in El Segundo, although she's taking a D.C. job. So she just left at the end of last month. So she was at the Torrance Armed Forces Parade, one of the senior flag officers. So she was on the show. So I did feature the Space Force. It's kind of boating related because we're participating. And next year, I'd like to march in the parade. If we can get enough people to hold the banners, get some more volunteers. This year, they didn't want us so many people on the ground. They had quite an incredible. It was so safe. They had all the neighboring police forces came out. They had cover, undercover, SWAT. And the motorcycle officers. It was the event was safe and wonderful and really exciting. And it went on for 3 days. So there were a lot of people. I haven't gotten the numbers yet. So it was somewhere around the same as last year. I think last year was about 120,000. This year was a little over 100. I'm not exactly sure. But I'm going to get somebody back on, and I thought, Rudy Lopez, our Coast Guard Auxiliary National Public Affairs was on the show. So, and he ran Fleet Week. I'm going to try to get him back on, or someone to talk about Fleet Week at the Battleship Iowa. Last year when Coast Guard was the featured branch, and I was at Fleet Week, and there's a West Marine across the street. I'd like to do a show there. I forgot what you call him, the guy that maintains the ships, the planks. He was restoring the teak wood that's on the deck of the battleship Iowa. We don't have battleships anymore in the Navy. The boats have gotten a little more sophisticated and a lot bigger. They have minesweepers and quite a few of the ships there. But he made clocks out of the teak. So I've got a teak clock, which has got dedicated to the battleship Iowa in my kitchen. So I was so excited. I got the last one. They gave him out as presents. And, of course, we'll talk about the ESPN covered the battle. They have a cooking battle, and that was also on ESPN too. So I'll talk a lot about that. Do you compete at all, Jensen? Are you out there in any of the races?
I did some racing for a while, but I discovered that my passion really is more about boating safety and keeping people safe on the water and traveling at a safe speed and just enjoying myself with my friends on the water.
It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to talk about my Catalina trip as well. Catalina's a wonderful place. It's got a glorious history, and it's been a long time. I had the Catalina Harbor Master. I also had from the Catalina Conservancy. So it's a wonderful island. I think it's time to talk about Catalina again. And, of course, I've talked to Dave Estes, who gives me the fish report. So he's going to come back on and talk about Farnsworth Bank a little bit more. That's one of the featured surf spots, top 10, from what I understand, in this hemisphere. So we're going to talk a little bit about Catalina and the backside. Many years ago, I was behind on the backside. I was actually trying to get to Del Rey has a spot on the backside of Catalina. So I was it took me almost as long to get from Marina Del Rey to Catalina to the Isthmus, to go from the Isthmus all the way around the north side of the island, to the backside of Catalina to join everybody from Del Rey. It was about the same amount of time in sailing to go around. Once I was there to go around the island, but that was fantastic. I absolutely love Catalina. So I saw when I was out there, I drifted. I was a little bit too far out, and I wasn't at any one of the islands yet behind Catalina. But I saw a big tanker, and it was a huge tanker, and they had a small little rib that came up to me, not to get too close. Well, you know what it turned out to be? It was a real odd ship, and I didn't know what it was, or I thought they were fishing. It's called Catalina Water, and they are the clean, filtered salt water that all the fish aquarium shops have, so you don't have to mix the salt. It's a very complex situation when you run a saltwater aquarium. And you see them, a lot of people have them, and that is the clean water. So it's called Catalina Water Company.
That's amazing. And that says a lot about the quality of the water out near Catalina. Yeah. It's impressive visibility, and if you want to go someplace in Southern California and see crystal clear water, go out to our various Channel Islands, whether that's Catalina or any of the more northern Channel Islands. The water's beautiful out there.
Yeah, and it's one of my it's on my bucket list. I snorkel, but I'm not scuba. I'm going to learn to get scuba certified. Farnsworth Bank, people come from all over the world just to go there. So it's a preserve. So Dave Estes, who does the fish report, is going to come on in some future shows and talk. We'll make that a subject. And our division commander in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, Grant Graves, is a scuba instructor, and he's also, I understand, a judge. He goes around the world and judges. I don't quite understand how scuba has competitions.
Yeah, well, I guess what he does is free diving. So free diving is where diving without any equipment. And so it's people that are incredible athletes that train to be able to dive to very deep depths just by holding their breath. They're able to slow down their heart rate, slow down their breathing, and able to descend quite a way and come back up. And so he's one of the people that's a judge, and he actually trains judges to do that.
Got it. I'm going to have a whole segment just on that. I found out a lot of I started out promoting the regattas and sailing and the yacht clubs, especially since they grew, during the 3 years of practically being locked down. Camping and sailing and the yacht clubs had a surge of people. It's been wonderful that so many people had been involved in that. So I'm going to have to, I got my rest of my summer shows lined up, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. Well, that's all the time that we have for you today. We barely scratched the surface with my in-studio guest. Jensen, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful. I do want to get the crew of the Deso 2 with Alverti and Lori Barth. I know her, and I've talked to her, and she's agreed to come on, and I'll have you come. Maybe we can do this down here in studio as well and talk to the crew and exactly what they do. So let's not forget the Coasties, protecting our waters, America's lifesavers and guardians of the sea. Here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick, we cover everything that sails, motors, and floats from San Diego to Santa Barbara. Thanks for being with us today, and please be sure to join us next week and every Saturday at 4 p.m. on AM 870. Thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios, reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California without drop zones and dead batteries and the inherent limitations of all other communication systems. Mobile Relay Associates, Raycom Radios. You can reach them MRA-Raycom.com. MRA-Raycom.com. So Mobile Relay Associates, Raycom Radios. Don't forget to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. Now on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. The Boating Hour with Captain Rick. I want to thank our in-studio guest, Jensen, for coming back this week. Keep your emails coming. It's Captain Rick saying ahoy and fair winds to all.